Okay, want to do a quick sound check and then I'm giving it to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Thank you, Sanford. Greetings to everyone on this Easter morning. Wonderful to hear so many voices that I have known over the years. Easter is the time of renewal, ascension. And it is a delight for me to be a guest speaker, along with my friend John Gray, on this celebratory day. We are living in a time of transition, moving from one state of experience and awareness to another state of awareness and experience. For many people, when there are changes in their lives, they are looking at progress. And that comes up in a lot of different arenas. In school, you're making progress as you move from grade to grade towards graduation. Sometimes in a social sense, you're making progress if you move to a better neighborhood, a different class of people. And there are other areas where change is seen in a context of progressing. Economics, for example, even scientific arena looks at progress. Even spiritual, sometimes taking different trainings, we tend to think of the training we're taking as a process where we get better. My reason for bringing this up is that my perception is that's not what's transpiring now. What's transpiring is a shift from one state to another. And that shift is being governed not by man's world, if I can put it that way, man's world, male and female, the ego-centered world, which views the change as progress, but rather a change that's occurring because of the creative cycle of life and those famous four forces that we've touched upon from time to time in different ways. Change is all-encompassing. Certainly, we're in the midst of that now. Back some years ago, Mikhail Gorbachev made some comments about change. I'm going to read his quote. The present-day global landscape is one of profound crisis, which could either end in the death of humankind or in a breakthrough to a new civilization. At present, we are running a race against time. Sounds familiar to today, doesn't it? What will happen next? A critical escalation of global threats and the collapse of our civilization? Or a critical growth of hope, of the willingness and ability of the international human community to develop new, truly humane ground rules for living together, capable of saving civilization through its renewal? It is let me try that again. It is up to all of us who live on the planet to answer this question. I really like that quote because it does touch upon the importance of our time and this requirement of a shift of consciousness and experience on the part of humanity. One of the profound aspects of this is the shift in awareness that the earth is alive. It has presence. It has a body. It has a mind. It has a feeling nature with all of its energies. which surrounds it. In my own experience, I've had some profound times of coming to that awareness that the earth is alive. One of my first experiences was when I was working as a project engineer up in the Arctic in the Prudhoe Bay oil fields. Donna had taken me to the airport in Los Angeles. I'd flown to the Arctic, was about holding some meetings up there with ARCO and British Petroleum and Sohio engineers. And in January, which is what this time frame was, it's black, dark, no sun, 24/7. And in this particular morning, I was hosting some meetings at a well gathering facility. And on the drive over there, this huge wave of green and yellow aurora borealis appeared. And the most interesting thing about this is often it was in the heavens and outer ways, but this was right where I was. And the curtain of the colors started coming lower and lower and lower. So I said to my driver, stop, bundled myself up because it's like 90 below zero, and jumped out of the vehicle and ran out into the tundra about 30 yards. And I stuck my hands up as far as I could reach. And in those moments of having my hands up, I felt like I had put my hands into the thinking process of the earth. It was alive, and I could feel that. It was very exciting and left a mark on me and my awareness. Some years later, Donna and I are living in the Portland, Oregon area, beautiful place. And we were visited by some friends, John and Sarah Wascom, who were coming to visit us from Louisiana. John was a PhD in geology and the current chairman of the Northwest Louisiana State University's geology department. And of course, he wanted to see Mount St. Helens. We had moved there about 6 months after Mount St. Helens had had its experience of exploding. So we agreed and we took off on a trip. It's only about a half hour, 45 minutes from where we were living, to visit the site of the change. And we happened up on a helicopter tour for a small nominal fee, of course, that would give us a ride over the area and all the changes that had taken place. So we gladly paid our money and had this wonderful tour of the surrounding area, which was like 200 square miles that had, in a moment or two, changed completely. At the very end, the pilot said to us, "Would you like to go inside the volcano?" And of course, John was screaming, "Yes, yes, yes." And so the south face of the volcano had exploded and fallen away. So we went in the south opening, and he took us around the lava dome that was emerging in the middle of the volcano. And there were pools of blue and red and white and yellow as the various minerals bubbling up from the earth. And the atmosphere is very sulfury, even in the helicopter. But I had the distinct perception that I was feeling the earth breathing. You could feel it moving. It was very tangible. And I came away again with the impression that the earth is alive. It has presence. A more recent experience was last summer into the fall. I was working with some friends in Australia and the local Kansas City radiation team to unfold the fires that were rampant and out of control in Australia. And in working with Attunement, that whole part of the world, it became obvious that something was happening between the equator and the equator, the south part of the equator field where the equator of Capricorn is located. So in that space, you could perceive that something was going on with not only moisture being dissipated, but also oxygen being dissipated. Well, the fires changed, as we're all aware of, but it left with me an impression again that everything was tied together. And it reminded me of what John Wascom had said to me once, and I wrote it down. And he said, "We call the earth Mother Earth. That's very basic. We do not live on a dead piece of rock. The plants are its lungs, the ocean and the streams, its heart and arteries. Prick your skin and you get blood. Dig a few inches in the ground and you hit water. The contents of your blood are the same as the ocean. I am suggesting that all of nature is interrelated. People think that things are haphazard, but they just don't happen. Nature has order and purpose and reveals a design." Very wise words. So what I want to suggest here, and this comes out of my attunement experience, is that the earth is very much like an individual, like you and me. If you've eaten too much sweets over the holidays, Christmas holiday, for example, or maybe the Easter holiday, you've been eating chocolate and all the rest, you overload your system and it goes out of balance. Nature employs bacteria, viruses, and maybe you end up with a congestion and your liver's congested, your sinuses are congested, you have a cold or whatever it might be. And what do? It stops you. You go to bed for a day or two. You quit eating all the junk food. You eat matzo ball soup and be very careful about what you're doing, and your body comes back to balance and I can get up and go back to work or whatever it is that I was doing. It is interesting that with the cutting down of the rainforests, which, as John indicated in his words to me, in some measure are the lungs of the planet, and I could see the connection in Australia, the fires there, and the Amazon basin in Brazil is in that same strata around the earth. That perhaps we've cut down too much and the earth can't breathe very well. Interesting, isn't it? In this day, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, what's the major symptom of that? Hard time breathing. So maybe something is being reflected in us as individuals that's already there in the collective sense. As I mentioned earlier, I feel we are at a time of tremendous opportunity, the shift from one state to another. And that shift is an opportunity to return to the garden state in Eden. Now, that may be just emerging in our awareness, but it's been in motion for a long time. And there have been planetary changes that have moved along over history to bring us to this point. Many of the great spiritual prophets and seers along the way have said humanity was living in a time of sleep. Or others said we were in a cloud. Peter Dina, who was the great Bulgarian spiritual prophet, said the Earth, the solar system, this part of the galaxy has been moving through the remnants of a dissolved constellation. And the remnants created a cloud. And so the intensity of light, the intensity of love's presence was dulled. On a cloudy day, we have a cloudy day here in Missouri right now, it's raining. You can go out, there's light, but it's not like having the crisp, clean sunshine of a bright, clear day. I suspect that we are moving into, I don't suspect, I know we have moved into a time where the light and love are increasing in intensity because we have exited the cloud. We have come out of the remnants of that dissolved constellation, and we've had a few years of grace to allow shifts to take place in ourselves so that we might adequately accommodate the new levels of radiation of love and the new brightness of light. So as I said, I feel we are at the threshold of a totally new experience. And I wanted to highlight that on Easter, because Easter is the renewal time. It's the time of ascension, the movement into a new state, which was demonstrated by the Master Teacher Jesus. So I want to invite you to work with me now to share attunement with our home, our planet home. In other words, let's share a global attunement. Now, some of you may not know exactly what attunement is. Others of you may have lots of years of experience. So I thought I would just read a couple of definitions of attunement. One by Lloyd Meager, Yolanda, from 1951. The purpose of attunement is this: to establish alignment in the body and mind and heart with the natural life forces of being. Alignment in the body with the forces of life from the source. Well said. That's attunement. Martin Exeter, who was a mentor of mine, put it this way. Attunement then, this was in 1974, attunement then is designed to provide what is needful to initiate the process by which a consciousness of the oneness of heaven and earth may be known once more. Also well put. The first attunement that I teach, that most attunement teachers teach, is the attunement between being and human. The capacities of expression, the body, the mind, the ability to discern energies, spiritual energies, and the feeling realm, the heart. Allowing those capacities to come again into alignment with source, being. I am a creator being having a human experience. So this initial shift of consciousness, the change, takes place in the first hour of an attunement class, because attunement energy is the energy of being. And until a person opens up to that, it doesn't come forth. Today, in this time, in this place, with all of you, I would like to share a global attunement with our home, Eden. Now, to do that, and to do it effectively, it requires getting past the flaming sword in the garden. I have a quote here somewhere of that verse from the Bible. It's Genesis 3, verse 24, part of it. And he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Sword is a beautiful word for truth. Truth is consciousness of identity, the I am being. And the flaming aspect, sharing the radiation of love. That's attunement. So to close my time, I would like to invite you to share attunement with me and to share attunement with, as we share attunement with the earth itself. And the requirements are, I let my consciousness of identity be, I am being, having a planetary experience. This is my own. This is my body. And I'm going to hold my body between my hands and release my loving radiation into this creation. So I'm going to just stop talking for a moment, ask you to put your hands together. You can put one hand at the South Pole, another hand at the North Pole, if that's easy for you to do. Another way to do it is to put your hands around the equator of the planet. So I'll give you a moment to do that. And let's pick up our home planet, our home, our body. And we are the cherubims sharing this radiation. As we do this, I'm going to speak a few words to direct our attunement. Let our radiance fill every atom, molecule, and protein, every virus, bacteria, and mineral, every mitochondria, cell wall, and cell, every organ and gland, every nerve and fluid, every bone and fiber, every cell of skin, myofascia, and lymphatic tissue, that this sacred form we live in may know the glory of life and life more abundantly. Let our radiation fill the electromagnetic field and the substance of mind, that the light may shine and reveal perception, awareness, and patterns of truth. And let our radiance fill this heart, that the whole temple form may know wisdom and understanding and compassion in the fire of love and union with the Great One. Let me live in attunement. Let the new heaven be created by reason of this attunement, that the garden in Eden may be revealed once more. It's always been there, but revealed once more. So let it be. This is our attunement in this day. So with these words and this attunement, I'm honored to turn it over to my friend John Gray, who I've not worked with in many years, but this is a great opportunity to do it today. So John, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Chris. And we continue in attunement. Chris has been an attunement master for most of 5 decades. Attunement may be described as subtle energy healing, and I think that's accurate from an earthly material perspective, looking up, as it were. In spiritual perspective, however, as Chris said so clearly, we may know that it serves as a means to help restore consciousness that heaven and earth are one. How vastly different we see the human and natural worlds when we know ourselves as beings coming out of the subtle realms into the world as it is. We are indeed divine beings having a planetary experience. This living body of the earth and the living body of humanity, as well as we ourselves as individuals, have immune systems. It's clear to most on Earth that humanity has compromised the Earth's immune system in numerous ways. The United Nations lists the biggies. Current world population, 7.75 billion of us. Climate change, the loss of biodiversity, phosphorus and nitrogen cycles wonky. They didn't say wonky, but I did. Ocean acidification, pollution of the seas, the ozone layer depletion, overfishing, deforestation. Wow. But somehow, most people in the so-called developed world anyway, unless directly affected personally, think of these things as being over there. But are they? I mean, what we do to the world, we do to ourselves. We've covered the planet with electromagnetic radiation. Do we imagine this has no effect on the planetary magnetic field and the Earth's immune system and on ours? Human beings cannot behave in self-serving ways with impunity. There are effects. There are unanticipated results. And the more of us there are, the larger those effects become. Eventually, and we are at this point now, as Chris emphasized, the rest of creation, as well as the Creator, says in effect to human beings, enough. Enough. The effects of the worldwide coronavirus pandemic has the attention of people in every country. Health professionals speak of it as the spread of a new viral contagion, transferred from person to person through airborne droplets and surface contact. This is what it looks like on the ground. And it's wise that we all in society play by the rules and by those who rule. But we may sense that there's a lot more to it. There's more going on than scary foreign pathogens invading human bodies. That surface level view seems accurate to a point, but it's incomplete. The germ theory of disease keeps people thinking in a certain channel. If it's accepted as the only way to see this thing, then it confines all that can be seen. So let's marshal all our forces and go to war against the evil invaders. But think about it. As Chris reminded us, when we're sick, our bodies naturally seek to rid themselves of toxins in various ways, such as through mucus expulsion and fever. Working through our body's immune systems, life itself seeks to cleanse our bodies from the inside out, to restore and maintain health and balance. It's at least interesting, if not relevant, that the Greek root of the word virus means poison. Where's the cause? And what's the effect? Bodies throw off viruses, poisons. These may affect others who are susceptible, but it's short-sighted to point fingers at the lowly virus as the culprit. Everything's out of balance in this man-made world. This is just one evidence. People react in a variety of ways to the pressures brought to bear in the current circumstance. It brings the best out in some people and and quite the reverse in others. We see examples of real heroism and some of base, self-centered behavior, while millions feel frightened and lonely. Under duress, people show their true colors. Ultimately, this reveals the nature of the personal identity we each accept and know. Two weeks ago on this teleconference, Larry Krantz spoke of the current situation as a beneficial global timeout. I guess it takes a pandemic to get worldwide attention. Yesterday, Bill Isaacs sent an essay entitled "The Coronation." In it, the author, Charles Eisenstein, expresses a refreshingly elevated perspective. He wrote, "For most of my life, I have had the feeling that humanity was nearing a crossroads. Always, the crisis, the collapse, the break was imminent, just around the bend. But it didn't come, and it didn't come. Now, all of a sudden, we go around a bend, and here it is. We stop, hardly able to believe that now it is happening. We are right to stop, stunned at the newness of our situation. Because of the 100 paths that radiate out in front of us, some lead in the same direction we've already been headed, some lead to hell on earth, and some lead to a world more healed and more beautiful than we ever dared believe to be possible." Later in the essay, Eisenstein goes on to say, "The phenomenon follows the template of initiation. Separation from normality, followed by a dilemma, breakdown, or ordeal, followed, if it is to be complete, by reintegration and celebration. Now the question arises, initiation into what? The popular name for the pandemic offers a clue. Coronavirus. A corona is a crown. Novel coronavirus pandemic means a new coronation for all." Here's a sense of possibility, an opening, an aperture through which light may stream and new vision possible, made possible. In spiritual identity, we each have our crowns, our stature as sovereigns in the divine order. This crown is not something we wear, however, nor is it something given to us. It is the evidence of the radiant presence of the God being we each truly are. The realizing of this truth in consciousness could be termed, as Charles Eisenstein put it, a new coronation. We come into our own. Today is Easter Sunday, and a day of religious celebration in the Christian world. From that indubitable online resource, Wikipedia, I learned that in 25 AD, in a council convened by Roman Emperor Constantine, it was decreed that Easter should be observed on the first Sunday following the first full moon after the spring equinox, March 21st in the Northern Hemisphere. I find it interesting that the choice of date to commemorate and celebrate the resurrection was and is not an arbitrary day on the calendar, but is determined by celestial events, the movements of the earth and the moon in their cosmic context. This hints at the scope and scale of the actual significance of what occurred. Let's look at Easter from a spiritual perspective. Religious concepts dominate the usual Christian view, but let's look anew. The world of Christianity celebrates, without much real awareness, that one man's resurrection and emergence from a tomb 2,000 years ago set heavenly events in motion, which the creative process is bringing to pass now on a collective scale within the body of humanity worldwide. Believers accept the resurrection of Jesus as an article of faith. Non-believers reject, deny, ignore it. But either way, the point is missed. From an inner standpoint, we may know, not in theory or belief, that that one man represented in himself, as a single individual, the whole body of mankind. He was and is, after all, and before all, the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. The patterns for the world that were established by what he did and what was done to him have been working out since. Now we are in the time of collective resurrection of a body of many members. This fact brings pressure within the established order of human society, and it's straining at the seams. What is coming out of heaven pushes out before it what won't accommodate it. There is a cleansing, a purification at work. Chris invited us to share a transcendent view of what in the world is happening. In attunement, we share a consciousness of the oneness of heaven and earth and perceive the magnitude of what's transpiring in these times which we live. It isn't the king who is coronated. He has always worn his crown in heaven, evidence of his radiant sovereignty. No, it is a collective body on earth that now rises to accept its crown in his name. This is why we each incarnated to be present now for the fulfillment of what has been rolling forward inexorably for what only seems to have been a long time. We're out of the cloud, and it's time to come into the world like like never before. Any who might wish to add a comment at this point, it's welcome.
This is Bill in Atlanta. Thank you, Chris and John, for your beautiful words today and for this special time that we're sharing together. How special to share a world attunement together. The Master said, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there ye may be also. Well, here was the invitation to let our consciousness be raised up to the place of true being. This has been described as a state of heavenly consciousness. Being in the garden, as Chris described it. When this is our factual state of consciousness, then we naturally extend an invitation to our world to share the experience of true being. It's good to be with all of you to let this occur. Here is the process that brings a new state on earth. And as we know, this process is inexorable.
John and Chris, thank you for this focus this morning. The power of agreement is the mightiest of forces. Agreement in the abundance of the spirit of life. And in this hour of attunement that we shared collectively, I felt the whole world stilled. There was a period of time where there was not a sound, not an electric sound, a buzz from electricity, a bird call, any sound at all. That was the power, the collective power. And I feel that the earth longs, it just longs to be encompassed and to have dominion established. I love, Chris, the reference that you made to the flaming sword that turns every way to keep the way of the tree of life. There's nothing in man's world that can destroy it. It's kept. And it's our power of agreement in times like this that hastens that renewal and proclaims that the earth is the Lord's. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Dina Paige in Toronto, and it's my first time attending this meeting. A very good friend of mine who is present, Alan, has pointed the direction to me to connect with all of you. And it's my privilege to be a part of such a long-standing group. And I'll be brief. I'm a avid follower of Eckhart Tolle, and he sent out a message to his students, if you will. And in that was one quotation that he cited from Shakespeare in saying that there's no such thing as good or bad or right or wrong, but thinking makes it so. It's a very deep message, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
As Chris was saying, coming out of the cloud, I was thinking that it's time for humanity to come out of the tomb. The earth is a womb where beauty was meant to be born, as the song goes, and love and truth and life. So I just wanted to acknowledge that this is not a happening from many, many years ago. It's something that happens now and now and now, that we come out of that slumbering state, that foggy state, the half-dead state, to live and breathe and let beauty be born. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
John, this is Shirley. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can. Okay. All right. We've been having trouble with our mic. I just wanted to add my deep thanksgiving for the talk from both of you, Chris and John. And I was thinking while we were sharing this attunement with Chris, there is an amazing experience being offered on YouTube right now during our hour, the same hour. Andrea Bocelli is offering a song, a time for the whole world to come together in love. And here we are providing the substance for this beautiful coming together, this awakening to happen worldwide. And before we started, there were already hundreds of thousands of people signed up, ready and waiting for this. So I felt the power of our togetherness being magnified by what Andre Bocelli was offering. So indeed, we are in a wonderful time together to let this newness emerge and the heaven to come into manifestation once more on earth. Thank you both for being so conscientious and attuned to doing this with us all. Oh, I love you.
Hello, Chris and John, and everyone who spoke. This is Laura Fisher, speaking from a place that still has 5 feet of snow on the ground. I would like to repeat part of the beautiful words of Pam. Our collective agreement hastens the renewal. I believe many are saying, what can I do? What can I do? This is horrible. What can I do? Herein lies the answer. Let us hasten the renewal by assuring that our collective agreement is intact always. I am deeply grateful to be with friends from all over our precious earth to do just that, to strengthen our collective agreement and to strengthen the knowledge we already know. This is how the job is done. Many blessings to you all.
Thank you, Laura. There may be others who may wish to comment. I'd like to give Chris an opportunity to say whatever you'd like to add at this point. You have to unmute yourself, of course.
There, I think I did it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all who commented. It's wonderful to share in this current of attunement in this hour. and to feel the vibrancy of our communion together. I often say in the attunement classes that I teach that love will out. Perhaps I could say it this morning, the truth of love will out. If there's someone who is expressing it. There is much in the earth and in the air above it, requiring cleansing and clearing, and the means to do that is attunement. My attunement in myself, with others, like this morning, with our home, earth, so that a new heaven may be generated. A clear, clean heaven that reveals the pattern of being. As we do that in our own experience, we know a blessing. And the earth, which is our home, knows a blessing. So I would often say at the end of classes or sometime together, let us stay in attunement and bless the world. Thank you, John.
Indeed, let us stay in attunement. The quality of this time has been just that, high altitude attunement. And all with which we are connected, which is everything, is blessed. We do this together, we do this in agreement, we do this as a single body sharing a single awareness and consciousness of our place and purpose on earth, specifically now. This is what we signed up for. So wonderful to be together in these days of fulfillment. Thank you, Chris. Thank you all.
John, can I say something? Is it too late to offer 2 cents into the consciousness?
No.
This is Ken Harris. Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
So this is a time not for doing anything. This is a time for beingness. This is a time for not more fear and despair. This is a time for calmness and assurance. We don't really have to do too much, but stay within the awareness that all is well. The divine plan is working out. The earth is purifying itself, and no one should be fretting. This has to happen. It's just part of the creative process. So my contribution in my world is this: to reassure people that all is well.
Thank you, Ken. All is well. Indeed. Okay.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, one and all, for your creative participation today. We'll gather again in 2 weeks on Sunday, April 26th with Volker Brendel. Transcripts of today's presentation and other presentations by other centers are available at toneoflife.org. Adios.